The mysterious discovery. John Carter had seen many things in space, but this was different. His cargo ship, the Star Wanderer, was traveling through the outer rim of the galaxy when his computer picked up a weak distress signal. The signal was old, barely readable, but it was still active. Unknown ship detected. No life signs confirmed. Distress beacon active. The robotic voice of his ship's eye echoed through the cockpit. John leaned forward, eyes narrowing. A dead ship. Out here. He hesitated. Space was dangerous. Pirates, scavengers, and unknown dangers lurked in every dark corner. But his gut told him to check it out. He activated the scanners. A broken ship drifted in the emptiness, its metal hull cracked open like a dying beast. The lights were flickering weakly. No movement, no power, just silence. John put on his spacesuit, grabbed his blaster, and took a deep breath. All right, let's see what's inside. A dark and silent wreck. The air inside the wrecked ship was cold and thin. Emergency lights cast a dim red glow over the walls. John stepped carefully, his boots making soft thuds against the metal floor. Bodies, alien bodies, small ones. His heart pounded. He had seen death before, but this was different. These weren't soldiers or warriors. They were young, children. John moved carefully, scanning the scene. The ship looked like it had been attacked. Bird marks on the walls. Wires torn out. Whoever did this wanted to make sure no one survived. Then, a sound. A weak, shivering breath. John froze. His eyes darted to the side. Behind a broken panel, something moved. He pushed aside the debris and gasped. Two small figures huddled together. The alien twins. The twins were unlike anything John had seen before. Their skin was smooth, almost glowing in the dim light. Their eyes, large, silver, and filled with fear. One was slightly taller, protecting the other. Both were shaking. Their clothes were torn, and strange golden markings ran down their arms. "Hey," John spoke softly, kneeling down. "I'm not here to hurt you." The taller twin, a girl, flinched but didn't move. The boy clung to her, too weak to react. They didn't understand his words, but they understood his tone. John slowly took off his glove and reached out. The girl hesitated. Then, with a trembling hand, she touched his fingers. A spark of warmth passed between them. They were alive, but barely. John knew they wouldn't last much longer in this cold, broken ship. He made a decision. A dangerous one. "All right, kids," he muttered, lifting them into his arms. "You're coming with me. Trouble follows." Back on the Star Wanderer, John wrapped the twins in thermal blankets and gave them water. They drank in small, careful sips, still watching him with wary eyes. He checked his scanners again. No pursuit, no signals. Whoever had attacked them was long gone. Or so he thought. As the Star Wanderer prepared to leave, a warning alarm blared through the ship. "Unidentified ship approaching," the AI announced. John's stomach twisted. Someone was coming. He grabbed his controls and powered up the engines. If this was the enemy, he couldn't afford to stay. The alien twins clutched each other as the ship lurched forward, blasting away from the wreckage. The enemy ship didn't follow. But John knew what this meant. Someone was looking for them. And soon, they would come for him too. Growing up on Earth, John Carter never thought of himself as a father. He was a cargo pilot, a loner, a man who preferred the quiet of space to the noise of crowded cities. But life had a way of surprising him. The alien twins, Zyra and Kian, were now his responsibility. He had rescued them from a dying ship, escaping before whoever had destroyed it could come back. But he knew that saving them once didn't mean they were safe forever. After making several stops in deep space, John finally decided to settle down on Terra 5, a human colony on the edge of the galaxy. It was a place where people didn't ask too many questions, perfect for hiding two alien children who were clearly different. A new life begins. The first few months were difficult. The twins didn't speak English or any human language, but they were smart. Too smart. John would catch them staring at holograms, tilting their heads as if they understood something deeper than what was being shown. Within weeks, they started picking up words, mimicking his speech. By the time they were a year older, they spoke English fluently, almost unnaturally well. But language wasn't the only strange thing about them. Zira was calm, observant, and quick-witted. She could sense things before they happened. One time, when John dropped a heavy tool, she turned around before it even hit the ground. Kian, on the other hand, was fast. Too fast. He could move across a room in the blink of an eye. Jump higher than any human child. His reflexes were sharper than any soldier's. They tried to hide their abilities, but John saw everything, and it terrified him. Secrets and shadows. One evening, John sat across from the twins at the dinner table. Zira looked at him with those silver eyes, unblinking, as if she could see through him. "Who are you?" he finally asked. "Where do you come from?" The twins looked at each other. Kian shifted uncomfortably. Zira hesitated. "We don't know," she said softly. "We only remember. Fire. Screams. Running." John clenched his fists. He had seen the wreckage. He knew someone had hunted them down. But why? "You had symbols on your arms," he pressed. "What do they mean?" Zira lowered her sleeve, revealing the golden markings on her skin. They shimmered under the light. "We don't know," she admitted. "But sometimes, when we sleep, we see things. A throne, a war, and someone calling our names." John felt a chill run down his spine. He had thought the twins were just orphans, victims of war. But now he wasn't so sure. He decided then and there he had to protect them, no matter what. A father's fear. Years passed, and the twins grew stronger. Faster. Smarter. John taught them how to fight, how to survive, how to blend in. He didn't let them use their powers in public, didn't let them draw attention. But trouble always found them. One day, when Kian was 12, a group of street thugs tried to rob them outside a market. Kian didn't think. He moved. Too fast. Before John could react, the first thug was on the ground, gasping for air. The second one had his weapon ripped from his hands. The third simply ran away, screaming. People stared. Whispers spread. John grabbed Kian by the arm and pulled him away. "You can't do that," John hissed once they were safe. "But they were going to hurt you," Kian argued. John exhaled sharply. "I don't care. You can't be seen doing that. Someone will come for you. Someone will take you away, and I won't be able to stop them." Kian looked down, ashamed, but Zira placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes full of understanding. "We have to be careful," she said. That night, John barely slept. He checked his security systems 3 times, listened for unusual sounds. Because he knew, if the wrong people found out what the twins could do, they would never be safe again. The first warning. John's fears became real sooner than he expected. One day, while fixing an old engine in his shop, he noticed a man in a dark coat watching them from across the street. At first, he thought it was nothing. But then he saw another, and another. Strangers, watching, waiting. His heart pounded. He had spent years keeping the twins hidden, and yet someone had found them. That night, Zira woke up screaming. John rushed to her side. "What happened?" She was shaking, eyes wide with terror. "I saw," she gasped. "A fleet. A fleet coming for us." John's blood ran cold. "How soon?" he asked. She didn't answer, but the fear in her eyes was enough. It was only a matter of time. They had to leave. Now. The truth uncovered. John Carter always knew this day would come. For years, he had hidden the twins, kept them safe, taught them how to live like humans. But now, everything was falling apart. Zyra's nightmare about the fleet wasn't just a dream. It was a warning. And the men in dark coats watching from the streets were just the beginning. John had spent his life running, moving from one planet to another, avoiding trouble. But this time, trouble had found them. They needed to leave. Now, the escape begins. John stuffed a small bag with essentials: money, weapons, fake IDs. The twins packed quickly, their faces filled with quiet fear. "What's happening?" Kion asked. John's voice was firm. "We've been found." "By who?" Zyra whispered. John paused. He didn't know, but he had a feeling it wasn't the police. It wasn't pirates. It wasn't mercenaries. It was something much worse. As they stepped outside, a black hovercraft screeched to a stop at the end of the street. Men in military-grade armor stepped out. Not human soldiers, not police. Their uniforms had no insignia, their faces hidden by helmets. They had come for the twins. "Run," John ordered. The three of them dashed into the alleyways, moving fast through the narrow streets. The soldiers followed. Blaster fire lit up the dark sky, but Kia moved like a shadow, dodging every shot. Zyra raised a hand, and the air around them shifted, slowing the soldiers down. John had seen them use their abilities before, but never like this. They were fighting back, instinctively, naturally, as if they had done this before. But how? They had never been trained for war. Had they? The hidden past. They reached an abandoned warehouse and locked the doors behind them. "We can't keep running," John panted. "We need to find out who they are, why they want you." Zyra closed her eyes, breathing heavily. "They're not just here for us. They're searching." John frowned. "Searching for what?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But I can feel it. Something old. Something powerful." Kion, pacing, finally spoke. "The wreckage." John's eyes widened. The wreckage of the twins' old ship. The ship where he had found them. Had he missed something? They had no choice. They had to go back. The journey back. John's old cargo ship, the Star Wanderer, was still docked at a hidden spaceport. They boarded quickly, starting the engines. As the ship blasted off, John punched in the coordinates. The wreckage was still floating in deep space, a graveyard of metal and shattered memories. The closer they got, the more uneasy Zyra became. "I feel something," she whispered. "Something. Alive." John's grip on the controls tightened. There's nothing left alive in that wreck. But as the wreckage came into view, his stomach dropped. Because there was something there. A small glowing beacon pulsed inside the ruins of the ship. It was still active. "Someone sent that signal," Kion said. "Someone who knew we were still out here." John didn't like this. Not one bit. But they had no choice. They had to go inside. The forgotten message. They stepped carefully into the wreckage. Everything was as John remembered. Twisted metal, broken walls, silence. But now, deep in the ruins, a small holographic pod flickered to life. A hologram appeared. It was an alien woman, her face filled with sorrow and urgency. "If you are seeing this, then my children are still alive." John felt the twins freeze beside him. The woman's voice trembled. "You must listen. You are in danger. They will never stop hunting you. You are the last heirs of the Zatvorian Empire." John inhaled sharply. He looked at the twins. "Royal heirs." The woman continued. "You were taken from us before the war, hidden away. We hoped you would be safe. But now they know. The traitors know you live. And they will come to kill you, just as they killed us." The image flickered. "I am sorry, my children. I do not know if we will ever meet again. But you must survive. You must return to Zifor. The throne is yours. Our people are waiting for you." The hologram vanished, and the silence that followed was deafening. "The truth hurts." John turned to the twins. They were royalty. The markings on their arms, not just decorations. They were royal insignias, a sign of their bloodline. Zira and Kian weren't just orphans. They were the rightful rulers of a lost empire. But now, that empire was under enemy control, and the people hunting them. They wanted to make sure the real heirs never came back. The decision. Kian clenched his fists. They killed our parents. Zira, her face pale, whispered, "We can't run anymore." John looked between them. He had raised them as his own, protected them, trained them. He had tried to keep them safe, but now they had to fight. John exhaled, then nodded. "Then let's take back your throne." The galactic threat arrives. The revelation changed everything. For years, John Carter had believed the twins were just lost orphans, victims of a forgotten war. Now he knew the truth. They were the last heirs of a fallen empire, a throne stolen, a family murdered. And now, the people who had hunted them across the galaxy were closing in. John looked at Zira and Kian, no longer just the alien children he had raised. They were royalty. But royalty meant nothing if you were dead. They had to prepare. A dangerous plan. Back aboard the Star Wanderer, John paced the cockpit. His mind raced with possibilities. They couldn't keep running forever. "We need to go to Ziffor," Kian said. John stopped. "That's suicide. If you think they're hunting you now, imagine what happens when you step onto the planet they stole from you." "They won't expect it," Zira argued. "They think we're weak. They think we're hiding. But what if we don't?" John exhaled. "You want to walk into a war zone." Kian nodded. "No, we want to start one." The first attack. Before they could make their move, the enemy made theirs. The moment the Star Wanderer broke out of the wreckage field, a massive battleship appeared on their scanners. John's stomach twisted. The ship was huge, twice the size of any Earth warship. The warning alarms blared. "Incoming transmission." A deep metallic voice echoed through the cockpit. "Surrender the heirs of Ziffor, and you will be spared." John exchanged a look with the twins. "I hate when they say that." Kian cracked his knuckles. "Then let's not surrender." Zira closed her eyes, her hands tightening into fists. "They're scanning us." John swore. "They know we're here." Without another word, he punched the thrusters to full power. The Star Wanderer lurched forward, cutting through space, dodging the first wave of enemy fire. But the battleship was faster than expected. "They're locking weapons," Zira shouted. John pulled the ship into a steep dive. A plasma blast ripped through the air where they had been seconds before. "This ship isn't built for battle," John growled. Kian was already at the weapons console. "Good thing I am." With a smirk, he fired back. The Star Wanderer didn't have much in terms of firepower, but Kian made every shot count. His reflexes were too fast, his aim too perfect. A missile struck the enemy ship's shields, creating just enough of an opening for them to escape into a nearby asteroid field. For now, they had survived. But John knew the truth. This was just the beginning, a desperate alliance. The only way they had a chance of winning was if they had allies. And John knew exactly who to ask. They landed on Dakar 9, a lawless space station known for its mercenaries, bounty hunters, and smugglers. The perfect place to find people who hated the Zyphorian usurpers. John led the twins through the crowded station. "Stay close. Don't trust anyone." Zira and Kian nodded. They entered a dimly lit bar filled with the worst criminals in the galaxy. But John wasn't looking for criminals. He was looking for one man. A figure sat at the far end of the bar, a glass of glowing blue liquid in his hand. His cybernetic eye flickered red, scanning them as they approached. John smirked. "Hello, Rax." Rax, former Zyphorian general, now a wanted fugitive, leaned back in his chair. "Carter, thought you were dead." "Almost," John said. He motioned to the twins. "I have something that might interest you." Rax looked at them. His eye narrowed. Then, suddenly, he stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "By the stars," he whispered, "it's true." The entire bar went silent. The people of Dakar 9 had heard the rumors, the lost heirs, the return of the real rulers. And now, they were staring at them. Some in awe, some in fear, some in rage. A bounty hunter stepped forward, his weapon already raised. That's a mighty big price on their heads. Rax moved faster than lightning. Before the bounty hunter could even pull the trigger, Rax had drawn his own blaster and shot him in the leg. The bounty hunter collapsed, screaming in pain. Rax holstered his weapon and turned to the crowd. Anyone else feeling lucky? No one moved. Rax looked back at John. "Tell me everything." The rebellion awakens. In a secret chamber deep within Dakar 9, John, Rax, and the twins studied a holographic map of Sci-Fi. The planet was heavily fortified, surrounded by warships, planetary shields, and legions of soldiers. But there was one weakness. The Undercity, Rax said. Old tunnels, long abandoned. If we can slip in undetected, we can reach the palace. Zira frowned. "And then what?" "We take it back," Kyan said simply. John exhaled. "You make it sound easy." Rax chuckled. "It won't be. But the people of Sci-Fi haven't forgotten the true heirs." Zira looked at him, curiosity in her eyes. "You still believe in the Empire?" Rax's face darkened. "I believe in justice." He turned to the map. "If you're serious about this, I can gather an army. But we need a signal, something to show the people you're real." Kyan thought for a moment. Then, slowly, he pulled back his sleeve, revealing the golden royal insignia on his arm. "Then let's give them one. The invasion begins." The message was sent. Across the galaxy, old warriors, rebels, and hidden supporters of the royal family received the call. The true heirs have returned. The time for running was over. The time for war had begun. As the Star Wanderer led a fleet of stolen warships toward Sci-Fi, John looked at the twins one last time. No longer children, no longer orphans. Now, they were leaders. And soon, they would be rulers. The call to destiny. The galaxy trembled with whispers. The lost heirs of Sci-Fi had returned. On every outpost, colony, and war-torn world, the message spread. Those loyal to the old empire listened. The rebellion was no longer a dream. It was real. But for John Carter, this wasn't just a revolution. It was a suicide mission. Sitting in the Star Wanderer's cockpit, John stared at the holographic map of Sci-Fi. The planet was a fortress, shielded by an unbreakable defense system, and guarded by a tyrant who had spent decades preparing for this very moment. "You really think we can win?" he asked. Kyan and Zira sat across from him. They were different now. Stronger, sharper, no longer scared children hiding in the shadows. "We don't have a choice," Kyan said. Zira nodded. "If we don't take back the throne, we'll be hunted for the rest of our lives. And so will anyone who stands with us." John exhaled, rubbing his temples. "And you're sure about this guy, Rax?" "I don't trust him." Kyan smirked. "Neither do I." Zira leaned forward, her silver eyes gleaming. "But we need him." John glanced at the fleet assembling outside the window. Hundreds of ships, each one filled with rebels, mercenaries, and exiled warriors who had lost everything to the Sci-Fi usurpers. They weren't just fighting for a throne. They were fighting for revenge. The tyrant's warning. As the fleet prepared, a transmission suddenly echoed through the ship. A holographic image appeared in the center of the room. A tall, skeletal figure in flowing black robes, his golden cybernetic eyes burning with malice. The twins froze. They knew this face. "Greetings, lost children," the figure sneered. His voice was smooth, confident, deadly. "I was wondering when you would crawl out of hiding." "Who is that?" John asked. Zira's hands clenched into fists. "Our uncle, the traitor." Lord Malachar. Malachar smirked. So the rumors are true. The royal brats still breathe. I must admit, I'm impressed. I thought my soldiers had erased every trace of your existence. His golden eyes narrowed. But it doesn't matter. You are nothing but ghosts of a dead empire. I rule Zyphor now, and if you dare set foot on my world, I will burn you from the sky. The transmission cut off. Silence filled the room. Then Kyan grinned. Guess we got his attention. John sighed. Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. A dangerous gamble. The battle plan was simple, in theory. Rax's fleet would create a diversion, drawing the enemy forces away from the planet's capital. The Star Wanderer would slip past the planetary defenses, sneaking into the abandoned tunnels beneath the royal palace. Zyra and Kian would fight their way to the throne room and take back their empire. Simple, except for the fact that the plan relied on everything going perfectly. Which, of course, it didn't. The battle for Zyphor begins. The moment Rax's fleet jumped into orbit, the entire enemy armada was waiting. The skies erupted in fire. Massive capital ships exchanged devastating cannon fire. Swarms of fighter drones filled the air, zipping between explosions. Inside the Star Wanderer, John gritted his teeth as the ship shook violently. This is a bad idea, he shouted, dodging a wave of enemy missiles. Kyan, gripping the co-pilot seat, laughed. You say that about all our ideas. Because they're all terrible, John snapped. Zyra ignored them, closing her eyes. She could feel something. A presence. A voice calling her name. She snapped her eyes open. We're almost through. Take us down. Now. John didn't argue. He punched the thrusters, sending the ship into a deadly dive. They broke through the atmosphere, fire trailing behind them. Enemy anti-air turrets locked on, launching barrage after barrage of laser fire. A direct hit would tear them apart. Hold on, John roared, weaving between blasts with impossible precision. Kian watched in awe. Since when can you fly like that? John smirked. Since I started babysitting alien royalty. The ship screamed through the sky, dodging fire by inches. Then, finally, they saw it. The ruins of the old underground city beneath the capital. And their way in. John pulled the ship into a hard landing, skidding across the ground. Metal screeched. Sparks flew. Then, silence. They had made it. For now. Into the shadows. The underground tunnels were cold, dark, and filled with the whispers of the past. This place is ancient, Kyan muttered. His voice echoed against the crumbling stone walls. Zyra ran her fingers along the walls, feeling the energy pulsing through them. Memories. Echoes. This was our home, she whispered, before Malachar took it. John kept his blaster ready. Yeah, well, I'm guessing he left a few surprises for us. He was right. As they moved deeper, the shadows came alive. Tall, skeletal creatures with glowing red eyes slithered from the darkness. Elite guards. Not human. Not machine. Something. Worse. John raised his blaster. Let me guess. Not friendly. The first creature lunged. Zyra's hand shot forward. A pulse of invisible energy blasted the creature into the wall, shattering it into dust. Kyan spun, dodging an attacker, and drove his fist through its chest. The creature crumbled like brittle bone. John whistled. All right. That's new. Kyan grinned. We're full of surprises. They moved forward, cutting through the enemies with brutal precision. Then, at last, they reached the throne room's entrance. The final battle was here. John exhaled. This is it, kids. Zyra and Kian nodded. They weren't scared. They were ready. The battle for the throne. The air in the underground passage was thick with dust and echoes of the past. The tunnel walls trembled, shaken by the raging battle above. John Carter wiped sweat from his forehead, gripping his blaster tighter. He could hear the distant explosions. Rax's fleet was holding the enemy forces at bay, But they wouldn't last forever. Zira and Kian stood at the entrance of the final chamber, the throne room. The place where their parents once ruled. The place where they would either reclaim their empire or die trying. "This is it," John muttered. "Last chance to turn around and live a quiet life somewhere." Kian cracked his knuckles. Too late for that. Zira's silver eyes gleamed with fire. "We finish this now." John sighed. "Yeah, figured you'd say that." With one final breath, they stepped inside. The throne room of shadows. The doors groaned open, revealing a vast chamber bathed in eerie golden light. At the far end, sitting upon the blackened throne of Zephyr, was Lord Malachar, the tyrant, their uncle. He sat in silence, his golden cybernetic eyes piercing through the shadows. His long, skeletal fingers drummed against the armrest of the throne. "You've come far," Malachar murmured, his voice smooth as silk. "I almost believed you were dead. Almost." Zira and Kian stepped forward, standing tall. "This throne does not belong to you," Zira said coldly. "It never did." Malachar tilted his head. "Oh, and you think it belongs to you? Children who ran and hid while their people suffered." Kian's fists clenched. "We didn't run." Malachar smirked. "No, but you did nothing. While I ruled, while I built an empire from the ashes of your weak parents." Zira stepped closer. "You didn't build an empire. You stole it." Malachar chuckled. "And yet, here I sit. And you? You are just children playing at war." He stood, his tall, gaunt frame casting a long shadow across the floor. "Tell me, little heirs," he said, "do you really think you can defeat me?" The air in the throne room shifted. John felt it instantly. A weight, a pressure, a presence. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Zira's breath hitched. "What is that?" Kian's hand hovered near his weapon. "I don't know, but it's not good." John raised his blaster. "I really, really hate this guy." Malachar smirked. "Let me show you what true power looks like." The monster revealed. Without warning, Malachar raised his hands, and the room erupted with energy. Dark tendrils of pure void energy slithered from his body, twisting like living shadows. The air grew heavy, filled with a deep, pulsing hum. John's instincts screamed. "Move," he shouted. Kian barely dodged as a shadow tendril lashed out, slicing through solid stone like it was paper. Zira threw up a shield, barely holding back the onslaught. Malachar laughed. "Did you think I sat idle on this throne? No, little ones, I have become more than just a ruler." His golden eyes flared, and the darkness expanded, swallowing the throne room in a swirling storm of shadow. John fired his blaster. The shot vanished into the void. "No effect," Kian growled. "Then we do this the hard way." He charged. The battle begins. Kian's speed was blinding. He zigzagged through the shadows, dodging Malachar's strikes with inhuman reflexes. Zira, her face set with focus, lifted both hands. A wave of energy blasted forward, cutting through the dark tendrils. Malachar deflected it effortlessly. John stayed back, taking shots where he could, trying to find a weak point. But Malachar was beyond anything they had faced before. His power wasn't just strength, it was ancient, forbidden, something unnatural. And then, he struck. A black tendril shot forward, hitting Kian square in the chest. Kian crashed into the wall, gasping as pain ripped through him. His golden markings flickered, as if Malachar's darkness was trying to consume them. "Kian," Zira screamed. She turned, fury igniting in her veins. Her silver eyes burned with raw power. "You won't touch him again," she whispered. Malachar grinned. "Then stop me, child." Zira's hands glowed, and the entire throne room trembled. The awakening. For years, Zira had felt something inside her. A power, a force waiting to be released. Now, it awoke. Golden energy pulsed from her body, pushing back Malakar's shadows. John stumbled backward, eyes wide. Is this normal? Kian, coughing as he got back up, grinned. Not for humans. Zyra lifted both hands and unleashed a blinding explosion of light. Malakar roared, his dark energy shrinking under the force. You think your light can stop me? He hissed. No, Zyra said. She closed her fist, and the golden energy solidified into a weapon, a blade of pure energy. Malakar's eyes widened. Impossible. Zyra lunged. The final blow. Their battle shook the palace. Light and darkness clashed, sending shockwaves through the walls. Zyra fought like she had done this 1,000 times before. Her movements were flawless, instinctual. Kian joined her, his speed overwhelming Malakar's defenses. John took a well-timed shot, hitting Malakar right in his cybernetic eye. The tyrant stumbled, and in that moment, Zyra struck. Her energy blade pierced through Malakar's chest. The dark tendrils shattered. Malakar's eyes widened in shock. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then, slowly, he collapsed. The darkness vanished, and the throne room was silent. The throne restored. Zyra and Kian stood in front of the empty throne. John stepped beside them. So, what now? Zyra looked at him, tired, but stronger than ever. Now, we rebuild. The doors burst open, and Rax entered, followed by hundreds of rebel warriors. They saw the fallen tyrant. They saw the true heirs standing tall. And then, they knelt. One by one, voices rose in a chant. Hail the rightful rulers of Zyfor. John smirked. Guess that means you win. Kian grinned. Yeah, guess we do. Zyra took a breath. The war was over, but their story was just beginning. A new dawn for 2 worlds. The battle was won. The throne room, once a place of tyranny and fear, now stood silent and free. Lord Malakar lay motionless, his once powerful form reduced to nothing but a broken husk. The darkness that had ruled Zyfor for so long had finally been shattered. But victory did not mean peace. Not yet. Zyra and Kian stood before the grand throne, staring at the massive golden seat that once belonged to their parents. The weight of the moment pressed down on them. They had reclaimed their birthright. But were they ready to rule? The weight of the crown. Outside the palace, the rebel army had flooded into the streets. Across Zyfor, people were celebrating, chanting the names of their true rulers. John Carter, watching from a high balcony, let out a slow breath. Well, kids, you did it. You're the most wanted orphans in the galaxy, and now you're in charge of a whole planet. Kian chuckled. You make it sound so easy. John smirked. It's not. Zyra's gaze swept across the city below. Fires still burned in the distance. The battle had ended, but the war to rebuild Zyfor had only just begun. The people need leadership, Rax said, stepping beside them. His cybernetic eye scanned the battlefield, analyzing damage reports. They need more than just warriors. They need rulers. Zyra nodded. Then we start today. She turned to Kian. We have to bring the people together. The ones who fought for Malakar and the ones who suffered under him. If we let anger control us, we'll be no better than he was. Kian crossed his arms. So what do we do? Zyra took a deep breath. We offer amnesty to Malakar's soldiers, those who surrender willingly. If they lay down their weapons, they will not be executed. We will build a new empire, not just reclaim the old one. John whistled. That's a bold move. Some of your people aren't gonna like that. Rax nodded. The warlords who resisted Malakar will expect revenge. If you show mercy, you'll make enemies among your own. Zyra met his gaze. If they cannot accept peace, then they were never fighting for Zyfor. They were fighting for themselves. A silence fell over the group. Finally, Kian nodded. Then let's make the announcement. A message to the galaxy. Across Zyfor, Massive holographic screens flickered to life. Every remaining fleet in orbit, every rebel soldier, every surviving citizen turned to watch. Zira and Kian stood together, their royal insignias glowing under the golden light of the palace. Zira stepped forward. Her voice was strong, unwavering. People of Zephyr, the war is over. Malakar's rule is finished. But this is not the time for more bloodshed. This is the time to rebuild. She paused, letting the words sink in. I know many of you suffered under his rule. Many lost family, homes, and hope. But today we begin a new era, one where Zephyr is no longer a place of fear and war, but of unity and strength. Kian stepped beside her. We offer amnesty to any soldier who surrenders. You will not be executed. You will be given a choice, to help rebuild or to leave this world forever. John, watching from the side, couldn't help but smile. They weren't just warriors anymore. They were leaders. The message ended. The world waited. And then, the impossible happened. Across the city, Malakar's remaining forces began laying down their weapons. One by one, warships in orbit powered down their cannons. It had worked. The war had truly ended. Earth responds. Hours later, a transmission from Earth's High Council arrived. John sighed. Here we go. A stern-looking woman appeared on the screen, her uniform crisp, her expression unreadable. This is Commander Ilara of Earth's Galactic Federation. We've been monitoring the situation on Zephyr. She paused. You have done the impossible. The Federation extends its congratulations to the rightful rulers of Zephyr. Zira nodded. Thank you, Commander. Ilara folded her hands. That said, we cannot ignore what has happened here. The overthrow of a galactic power is not a small event. There are many who fear what this new empire will become. Kian smirked. So what? You're gonna try and stop us now. Ilara's expression softened slightly. No, but Earth cannot officially support a new regime without knowing its intentions. Zira took a step forward. We have no interest in war with Earth. Zephyr is not a threat to humanity. In fact, we wish for an alliance. John raised an eyebrow. The commander studied Zira and Kian carefully. An alliance. Kian nodded. We don't just want to rebuild. We want to make something better. Trade. Shared technology. Mutual defense. We don't need more enemies. Ilara was silent for a long moment. Then she smiled. Very well. We will open diplomatic discussions. But be warned, your enemies are not gone. Other forces in the galaxy will not welcome this new empire so easily. Zira's eyes flashed with determination. Let them come. A farewell and a promise. Later that evening, John stood outside the palace, staring up at the stars. He had spent years protecting these kids, teaching them, guiding them. And now, they didn't need him anymore. He turned as Kian and Zira approached. You're leaving, aren't you? Zira asked softly. John sighed. Yeah, kid. I think my job here is done. You don't need a washed-up cargo pilot hanging around your royal court. Kian grinned. We still need a good pilot. John smirked. I think you'll do fine without me. Zira's silver eyes shimmered. You raised us, John. You are our family. John swallowed hard. Yeah, you're mine too. He ruffled Kian's hair. Don't start any wars you can't win. Kian chuckled. No promises. John turned to Zira. And you, keep your brother out of trouble. Zira smiled. I always do. John took one last look at them. Not children, not orphans, not fugitives. Rulers, leaders of a new empire. And as he boarded the Star Wanderer, preparing to head off into the unknown, he knew one thing for sure. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Epilogue. Shadows in the void. Far beyond Zephyr, in the depths of an uncharted system, a cloaked figure stood before a massive, glowing monolith. A deep, hollow voice echoed through the void. Malachar has fallen. The figure smiled. Good. The real game begins now. The monolith pulsed with a strange, ancient energy, and somewhere in the darkness, something awakened.